June 17th, 1967. Monterey County Fairgrounds, California. Backstage 3 hours before the evening performances. The air smelled like ocean salt mixed with cigarette smoke and nervous energy. The Monterey Pop Festival was about to introduce America to a new kind of music. Psychedelic rock, British invasion bands, San Francisco sounds, and somewhere in that mix, two artists who would redefine what popular music could be. Otis Redding was sitting on a folding chair outside his dressing room, feet up on an equipment case, wearing a sharp suit despite the California heat. At 26 years old, he was the undisputed king of soul music. His voice could shake buildings. "I've been loving you too long" had made grown men cry. "Try a Little Tenderness" had become an anthem. When Otis sang, you believed every word because every word came from a place deeper than technique. It came from lived experience, from the South, from struggle, from truth. He was confident. Why wouldn't he be? He'd conquered the Apollo Theater. He'd recorded at Stax in Memphis with the best musicians in the world. His voice was an instrument that other singers studied but couldn't replicate. The power, the rasp, the way he could stretch a syllable into a sermon. He was soul royalty. A music journalist sat with him, asking questions about the festival lineup. Otis was generous with his time, answering thoughtfully, laughing easily. He had that quality, charisma that made people lean in when he spoke. "You see that Hendrix guy yet?" the journalist asked. "Word is he's going to set his guitar on fire tonight." Otis smiled. "I heard about him. British cats talk about him like he's some kind of god. Guitar player, right?" "Yeah, but he sings too. His own songs." Otis nodded slowly. "Rock boys always sing their own songs. That's fine. Different thing, though. Rock singing and soul singing. Those are different languages." "What's the difference?" "Soul comes from somewhere deep. Comes from church, from pain, from history. You can't learn it. You live it. These rock cats, they got energy. They got volume. But soul?" Otis shook his head gently, not mean, just stating what he saw as fact. "That's ours. That's something you're born into." The journalist scribbled notes. "So you don't think Hendrix can really sing?" "I didn't say that. I said he's a rock singer. I'm sure he's fine for what he does. But real soul singing? That's a different thing entirely." The conversation drifted to other topics. The journalist left. Otis stayed in his chair, watching the organized chaos of a festival backstage. Bands setting up equipment. Sound checks happening on 3 different stages. Nervous energy everywhere. Around 4 p.m., Chaz Chandler appeared, walking with a tall black man in elaborate clothes. A huge afro, bright colors, Hendrix. Otis had seen photos, but in person the guy was striking. Dressed like he'd raided a costume shop, but somehow it worked. Confident walk. Guitar case slung over his shoulder like it was part of his body. Chandler spotted Otis and headed over. "Otis Redding, meet Jimi Hendrix." They shook hands. Jimmy's grip was firm but not aggressive. "Man, I'm a huge fan," Jimmy said, his voice quiet, almost shy. "I've been listening to your records since I was playing clubs in the South. These arms of mine changed how I thought about singing." Otis studied him. No irony in the voice, genuine respect. "Appreciate that. Heard you're tearing up London." "Trying to. Different scene over there. They let you experiment more." Chandler jumped in, salesman energy. "Jimmy's about to blow minds tonight. You should watch his set." "I'll try to," Otis said politely. "I'm on right after the Grateful Dead, so depends on timing." Jimmy nodded. "I understand. If I miss your set, I'll catch you on the next tour. Man can dream, right?" They talked for a few more minutes. Shop talk, venues, audiences, the business side of music. Then Chandler pulled Jimmy away to meet other people, work the room, build buzz. After they left, Otis's bass player, who'd been standing nearby, said, "Seems like a nice cat." "Yeah," Otis agreed. "Nice cat. We'll see if he can back up the hype." 2 hours later, Otis was warming up his voice in his dressing room when he heard it. Feedback. Not the accidental kind. Controlled feedback that sounded like a scream from another dimension. Then drums kicked in. Heavy, driving. And underneath it all, a guitar sound that didn't seem physically possible. Otis stepped out of his dressing room. Other artists were gathered near the stage entrance, watching monitors, trying to see what was happening. On screen, Jimi was playing Wild Thing, and he was doing things to a guitar that made Otis stop walking. The guy was playing with his teeth, behind his head, making sounds that seemed to violate the laws of what a guitar could do. The crowd was losing their minds, screaming. Some people looked terrified, others looked like they were witnessing a religious experience. Jesus Christ, someone said. Might have been Janis Joplin, might have been someone else. Hard to tell. Everyone was transfixed. When Jimi finished by kneeling down and setting his guitar on fire, lighter fluid flames licking up the neck while feedback screamed through the speakers. The backstage area erupted. Artists were looking at each other, shaking their heads, trying to process what they'd just seen. Otis went back to his dressing room. His set was in 45 minutes. He needed to focus. But something was bothering him. Not jealousy, something else. A question that wouldn't leave him alone. Could that guy actually sing? Otis performed his set and killed it, as he always did. The Monterey crowd, mostly white, mostly young, mostly there for rock music, gave a standing ovation to a soul singer from Macon, Georgia. His voice was so powerful, so genuine, that genre didn't matter. Truth was truth. After his set, still sweating, still buzzing from the performance, Otis walked backstage. Jimi was there, sitting alone on an equipment case, guitar in his lap, quietly playing something soft. Not for anyone, just for himself. Otis walked over. "Hell of a show you put on." Jimi looked up, smiled. "Thanks, man. Yours too. I watched from the side. You've got the whole crowd in your hand. That's mastery. Appreciate it." Otis paused. The question was still there. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. You sing your own songs, right?" "Yeah, I try." Otis nodded slowly. "Sing me something. No guitar, just your voice. I want to hear what you got without all the electricity." Jimi looked surprised, set his guitar down carefully. "What do you want to hear?" "Your choice. Something that means something to you." Jimi stood up, thought for a moment. Then he started singing. "Try a Little Tenderness." Otis felt something cold run through his chest. That was his song, his signature song, the one that had defined his career, and this rock guitarist was about to sing it to him. For a second, Otis considered stopping him, saying, "No, pick something else, anything else." But something kept him quiet. Curiosity, maybe respect, maybe the same instinct that had made him ask the question in the first place. He wanted to know if this man could really sing, and now he was about to find out in the most vulnerable way possible, by hearing his own song reflected back at him. Jimi sang it a cappella. No instruments, no backing, just voice. He sang it soft, softer than Otis ever had, not trying to match power, not trying to impress, just singing it like he was alone in a room, telling a story to someone he loved. His voice had a different quality than Otis expected. Not rough, not blues shouting, vulnerable, almost fragile. The first line came out almost as a whisper. "You know she's waiting, just anticipating." Jimi closed his eyes. His body swayed slightly, finding rhythm in silence. No band, no metronome, just the internal pulse of the song. Otis felt his own breath slow down, matching Jimi's phrasing without realizing it. This was different from every cover version he'd ever heard. Most singers tried to imitate his power, his delivery, his crescendos. Jimi was doing the opposite. He was stripping the song down to its skeleton, finding the quiet hurt underneath the gospel shout. "You gotta squeeze her, don't tease her, never leave her." The phrasing was different. Where Otis built to crescendos, Jimi stayed low, intimate. Where Otis used power, Jimi used space. The silences between words were as important as the words themselves. His voice cracked on certain notes, not because he couldn't hit them, because the emotion demanded it. He didn't smooth it over. He let the crack be part of the truth. "Try a Little Tenderness." Other people backstage had stopped talking, stopped moving. Everyone was listening to this man in psychedelic clothes singing one of the most famous soul songs ever written, and somehow making it new, making it his, making it hurt in a different way. A young photographer who'd been snapping candid shots lowered her camera. Couldn't shoot, could only listen. Otis stood perfectly still, His bass player, standing a few feet away, watched Otis's face. Later, he would say that Otis looked like someone had just told him a secret about himself he didn't know was there. Something was happening inside Otis that he couldn't name. He'd heard hundreds of singers cover his songs. Some were good, some were terrible. Most were somewhere in between. But none of them had ever made him question his own understanding of what he'd written. This wasn't better or worse than his version. It was something else entirely. It was the same song sung from the other side of the same pain, where Otis sang from the place of begging, pleading, trying to hold on. Jimi was singing from the place of already knowing it was over. The same tenderness, but viewed through the lens of loss instead of hope. Otis realized his hands were shaking slightly, not from cold, from recognition. This young rock guitarist in psychedelic clothes had just shown him that his own song had rooms he'd never walked into. When Jimi finished, there was silence. Not the awkward kind. The kind that happens when something true has just been spoken and nobody wants to be the first to break the spell. Jimi looked at Otis, waited. "That okay?" Otis didn't answer right away. Couldn't. His throat felt tight, his eyes were wet, and he wasn't sure why. He'd sung that song hundreds of times. He'd written parts of it. It was his. But Jimi had just shown him something in his own song he'd never seen. A different kind of pain. Not the pain of a man begging his woman to stay. The pain of a man who knows she's already gone. "Where did you learn to sing like that?" Otis finally asked, his voice quieter than usual. "My mama used to sing to me when I was little. Church songs, blues songs. She died when I was young. I remember how her voice sounded when she was sad. That's what I hear when I sing." Otis nodded slowly, wiped his eyes, didn't hide it. "You just sang my pain better than I do." "No," Jimi said immediately. "That's your song, your pain. I just borrowed it for a minute." "You didn't borrow it. You understood it." Otis sat down on the equipment case, processing. "I've been singing that song for years, thinking I knew what it meant. You just showed me I only knew half of it." Jimi sat down next to him. "Your version is the real one, the one that matters. I was just trying something different." They sat in silence for a while. Backstage chaos continued around them, but they were in their own moment. "Can I ask you something?" Otis said. "Sure." "When you were singing just now, what were you thinking about?" Jimi looked at his hands. "My mother. She used to worry so much, and my dad wasn't good at showing her he cared." Jimi paused. "I always wished he'd just been tender with her. Just once." Otis nodded slowly. "That's what you were singing, not my version. Your version. I wasn't trying to change your song. You didn't change it. You showed me what it looks like from the other side. I wrote that song about a man trying to hold on. You sang it about a man who wishes he'd tried harder when he had the chance." Otis took another drag. "Both versions are true. That's what gets me." The production assistant walked by again, more urgent this time. "Otis, seriously, they're waiting." Otis waved him off. Not rudely, just not ready to move yet. "You know what scares me?" Otis said quietly. "I've been singing my whole life. Church, clubs, studios, arenas, and I thought I understood my own songs. Then you come along and show me I'm still learning." "That's not a bad thing," Jimi said. "No, it's humbling, but it's good." Otis looked at him. "Makes me want to listen more. To other singers, to different approaches, to stop thinking I got it all figured out." "Rock boys can't sing soul," Otis said finally, almost to himself. "That's what I said earlier. Said it to a journalist. Said rock singing and soul singing are different languages." "They are," Jimi said. "No." Otis shook his head. "I was wrong. Pain is pain. Doesn't matter if it comes through electric guitar or acoustic. Doesn't matter if you learned it in church or on the road. If it's real, it's real." "You weren't wrong," Jimi said gently. "Your tradition, your history, that's sacred. I'm not trying to claim it. I'm just trying to express what I feel with the tools I have." "Your tools work just fine." Otis looked at him. "You're a soul singer, Jimi. Maybe you don't call yourself that. Maybe you dress like you're from another planet. But that voice, that's soul. That's the real thing." A production assistant walked by, called out, "Otis, they need you for press photos in 5 minutes." Otis waved acknowledgement, stood up. Jimi stood too. "Will you record it?" Otis asked. "Your version of Tenderness? It's your song. It's a song that belongs to whoever can tell its truth. You told a truth tonight I hadn't heard before. Record it. Please." They shook hands. Otis headed to press photos. Jimi picked up his guitar and disappeared into the festival crowd. 6 months later, December 10th, 1967, Otis Redding died in a plane crash. He was 26 years old. Lake Monona, Wisconsin. The world lost one of the greatest voices in soul music history. Jimi never recorded "Try a Little Tenderness." He told friends later that it wouldn't be right, not after Otis died. That song belonged to Otis, always would. But in interviews in 1968 and 1969, when asked about his influences, Jimi always mentioned Otis. "He taught me that singing isn't about how loud you can get or how many notes you can hit. It's about how honest you can be. That lesson changed everything for me." People who were backstage at Monterey that night tell the story differently depending on who's telling it. Some say Jimi sang for 2 minutes. Some say 5. Some remember other people crying. Some remember just silence. But everyone who was there agrees on one thing. When Jimi Hendrix sang "Try a Little Tenderness" to Otis Redding, something shifted. A rock guitarist showed a soul legend that the walls between genres were thinner than anyone thought. That vulnerability was stronger than volume. That truth could be spoken in different dialects but still be understood. Otis Redding said rock boys can't sing soul. Jimi Hendrix responded not with an argument, but with a song. And in that moment, backstage at Monterey, the king of soul learned that pain doesn't have a genre. It just has a voice.